Welcome, friends, to the Bride of Christ, a special program on Hebrew Nation, but also doing this as a video for the sake of those that might not be able to get to Wednesday afternoon at 4 in the afternoon Pacific time. Nothing is so important as marriage in life for potential happiness or potential unhappiness. It seems like it's from the frying pan to the fire for some people when they want to get away from mom and dad and get married. But it's learning responsibilities and trying to give more than you get, and being fair, equal. The point is that we're coming to a time for marriage in the Bible. The wedding parables, they were given the last week of Christ's life, and they are for the last week of years. And if you wonder about that, it's in Luke 12, verse 43 and 44. Peter was asking, is this parable for us or for all? Christ said, blessed is that servant who is so doing when he comes. Okay, so this is when he comes, and the promise is, if we're so doing, he will make us ruler over all that he has. Well, since my name is Ruhling, I really want to understand that. And I think I do. And I ask you to please hear it, because somehow I've never heard a sermon on this. It's just not there. I don't know why. It's the wedding is only mentioned once, and the parable word is only mentioned once when Peter asks, is this parable for us? So maybe most pastors in a busy time don't see it, don't think it's for us. But anyway, I think it can be. And high reward, ruler over all, versus beaten with stripes. If you don't get this, I think you'll be beaten with stripes. And if you know to prepare and don't, you'll be beaten with many stripes. That's verses 47 of Luke 12. And to whom much is given, much is required. Well, he's giving us much in this promise. This is not me promising you this. This is God, Christ, okay, promising you. And it's important. It must be important, or he wouldn't be promising so much. The truth is that God's side is losing in this battle right now between good and evil. You look out anywhere in the world, and it's a bad situation. And God is going, but God has saved the best for last. But we're going to look at the 5 wedding messages in this discussion today. 3 of them are parables in the Gospels, and then there's Luke's wedding parable that I've already mentioned has half a dozen parallels to the Laodicean message. Both places get a knock, both places are to open, both places get a meal when they do open, and ruler over all that he has is the same as sit with me on my throne in Revelation 3:21. We just haven't seen that message to the Laodiceans as a wedding message. It doesn't sound very good in verse 17. You're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, naked. Well, that's really addressed to the pastors. They should know better. They should go deeper. They should tell us more, basically. And I'm just saying God is going to refine the sons of Levi, as we sing about at Christmas time. In Handel's Messiah, he shall purify the sons of Levi. Well, that's the pastors. They don't get it. They think it's a quick snatch to heaven and we're out of here. Not at all. Not at all. And if you look in the Bible at the first wedding message, I like a favorite author of mine says that one example is worth many precepts or teachings. And the example is really the Exodus. Okay, God executed judgment on Egypt and took his people to a covenant that he regarded as a kingdom and marriage. Okay, he says, if you keep my covenant, you'll be to me a kingdom, in Exodus 19, verses 5 and 6. But later in Jeremiah 3:14, he says, return to me, I'm married to you. Well, when did they get married? He was regarding the covenant they made as a marriage relationship also. We think of making a solemn covenant in marriage, till death do us part. Well, and then we forget about it in about 6 months and wish we hadn't done it, okay? But we've made a solemn promise before God and others and need to honor our word. Are we for real? God is, and he's going to hold us accountable, I think, also to his word. And he's painted a big picture, a lot of happiness, and I think we can do it if we're really understanding how. But the point is that when I was in college and I thought I was going to medical school, which I did go, I wanted to get married before I became a rich doctor, because then every girl would want a rich doctor for a husband. I wanted somebody to love me for who I am, not because of my money. So I wanted to find a wife in college, and I just didn't get it. Kids, when it came down to the wedding and getting engaged, my bride-to-be wrote invitations to lots of people to tell them. Well, God is like that. In Matthew 22, he says the king makes a marriage for his son, and he sends his servants to bid people to the wedding. Well, are we his servants or not? Well, I think we can be, and I think we should be, and we should be bidding people to a marriage. And so you can use this video, invite them to take a look. This is how it happens, and so on. And I'm going to give this in the form of a news story. In news, they teach you in college journalism who, what, where, when, why, and how. Okay. Well, I want to answer those questions. How? I'm going to do it backwards. By the grace of God. Grace is something that we don't deserve, but what he wants to do for us is better than we can ever deserve. Okay, ruler over all. Isn't that great enough? I mean, if you could get into the White House for 1 or 2 terms, it's worth millions of dollars to some people to get there. But this is not like 2 terms in the White House. This is because that's going to be done and gone in a few years. Okay, but ruler over all that he has is forever and ever and ever. How long is that? I heard once that if you had a little bird that flew from here to the moon and back, picked a few grains of earth and flew it to the moon and dropped those grains there, by the time the earth has disappeared back and forth by the little bird, eternity will have only begun. Okay, this is worth more than I can ever explain, and I hope you get it. Okay, and if you get it, you'll want to be God's servant and invite people to the wedding, which is what this is about. And it's not about a quick snatch, as we've already said. God executed judgment on Egypt, took his people to a covenant relationship, and the covenant is the marriage. Okay, and I want to help you understand how important that is. Basically, when God made covenants with his people, they weren't always. Let me just say this: in Genesis 15th chapter, when God made a covenant with Abraham, there was a sacrifice divided, and God alone went between the pieces of the sacrifice. Anciently, both parties went between the sacrifice to say, if I don't keep my part of the bargain, tear me apart. May I be torn apart like this sacrifice. But when God did it, he alone took the responsibility of what he was promising Abraham. Abraham could take it or leave it, the promised land, okay? And we can take it or leave it, okay? But it's big trouble if we don't, because the promised land is a type of heaven, and but there's more to this than just a quick answer right now. We can marry and become the bride of Christ if we understand what he wants from us in a covenant relationship. And I want to tell you a little story. When I was I heard it on Focus on the Family, really, and it's how first century marriages were contracted. When a man and his son would visit another home of a man and his daughter, and the men might be talking about price, okay, for this situation, but the young couple might be talking for the first time. And maybe they'd never seen each other before, but they probably talked about everything: money, family, sex, kids, religion, food, attitudes, okay? And if the conversations were wise and careful and they were agreeable, the father would take some grape juice and pour a cup to his son, who offered it to the young lady. And if she accepted, they were officially engaged to be married. He would return to his father's house to build a room on to his father's house, and she would sew and get ready, and he would come in about a year. Now that doesn't sound like romance to us today when we want to date somebody and we want to hug them and kiss them and so on. But that's trouble, because then the water is muddy. You don't really, you think, oh, I love this person. Well, everybody loves affection, physical affection. But the point is, you got to make a decision before those affection is shown, really, because otherwise you get confused and you think you love when lots of people love today, and the love is gone tomorrow or in a few months after marriage. So you need the choice of what it's going to be like and what you expect. And I believe that we need this in our relationship with Christ when we see what He wants from us. And I'm seeing really that He wants a covenant. First of all, the covenant is the agreement. And we will need to make that. And the point is that there is in the wedding parable of Matthew 22, there was a wedding feast, and the man without a wedding garment was thrown out. And we might wonder who that man is and why is he thrown out. I don't want to spill all of it right now for you, although maybe I should. I already told you that the Laodicean message is Luke's wedding parable repeated in different ways. Both get a knock, both get opened, both have a meal. Ruler over all is the same as sit with me on my throne. Luke says, have your loins girded. In Revelation 3, you need white raiment. Luke says, have your lights burning so you can see. And in Revelation 3, you need eye salve to see. So half a dozen parallels, but the point is that message to Laodicea is not to the church. It's to the agolos, or messenger of the church, the preachers. And it is the preachers that are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked, although rarely does the church ascend higher than what the pastors are. If the pastors don't get it, the people don't get it. So we aren't better than the pastors, but it's really, God's going to hold the pastors accountable, and He's going to remove their jurisdiction, I think, when He does what He did in Egypt. And I said the first example in the Bible of the wedding is really Egypt, when God took His people to a covenant. And He executed judgment on Egypt. Well, America is like that, really. America is like Egypt. Egypt enslaved people, and America has enslaved most people in alcohol, tobacco, drugs. Even medical care is a form of bondage. And we have negative lifestyles, rampant, okay, from on the media and so on. It's almost pornographic to watch some things. Even on the internet sometimes, you can hardly stand the distractions. Well, as Job said, I made a covenant with my eye that I would not think on a maid. Don't go there. Don't think about that. Don't even look, okay? And you'll be better off than with the distractions. And so I'll just say we can be prepared for what's coming if we understand Egypt, because the wedding parables, all three of them, teach a sudden event beyond which it is too late to get ready. Okay, that was Egypt. Okay, sudden event. God executed judgment, and they left the next day. If you weren't ready, sorry, it was too late. And some Jewish people speculate that there were a lot of Jews that didn't go, and there were some Egyptians that did. They wanted to be part of what they were afraid. They saw the earlier plagues, and they wanted to be with Israel. That was the mixed multitude, but they were often a source of trouble later. They wanted the flesh pots of Egypt and so on. Well, don't want to get too deep into this, but just want to explain that Egypt is the model, and the sudden event was a judgment by God. And if you look at the wedding parables, you see that in each of them. Okay, first of all, in Matthew 22, and by the way, verse 6 says that the remnant were treated scornfully, and so God sent His armies, the king sent his armies, and burned up the city of the people. Okay, so I think the remnant are going to get their city burned. Okay, now if you are in a church where you think you're the remnant, you might identify with a remnant. Personally, don't want to go there right now. We'll talk about this later maybe, but I think bad things are coming to a remnant when their city is burned. And the next parable, Matthew 25, you recall I said there's each wedding parable has a sudden event beyond which it's too late to get ready. Well, the midnight cry was that sudden event in Egypt. Okay, a great cry went up from Egypt at midnight in Exodus 12, verse 29 and 30. So again, parallel event, judgment, bad event really, but need to be ready for it. And there was protection for those that were. They could put blood on the doorpost and they were protected. We don't have to put blood on the doorpost, but watch and pray. If the goodman, if he'd have known, would have watched, not suffered his house to be broken. If we watch and pray at God's appointed time, I believe we can be protected by the event that's going to happen at that time. And what is that event? I believe the next parable, Luke 12, verse 36, it helps us understand it. It says that we should be like men that are ready when he comes from the wedding and knocks, we may open immediately. Well, what's the knock? There's only two places in the New Testament where Christ knocks. Okay, and the Luke 12:36 is a knock, but also Revelation 3:20. Every evangelical Christian knows that, and they think, well, Christ is knocking. Gentle Jesus always knocking at the door of my heart, and how nice that is. If we don't hear him today, we can hear him tomorrow. Well, the Luke 12 doesn't say whenever. It says, be ready when I come and knock to open immediately. So this is a different knock, okay? It's not just gentle Jesus always knocking. And the point is that Revelation, where the other knock is, that church, last lukewarm church, materialistic, they thought they were rich, increased with goods, weren't interested in Christ knocking at the door. He kept him out. Christ is the truth. They kept truth out. And I see that happening today in the church that I grew up in. And, unless you have a smooth message from the seminary and get along with everybody else, you're not asked to speak. You don't get a chance. And they have Christ outside, basically. So, not good. And that church, anciently, Laodicea, ended in an earthquake, okay? That's, I think, type and antitype for our time. And I believe we will see a huge earthquake to initiate the end times when lukewarm churches will be, like the goodman who should have known, should have watched, and should have instructed his church to watch and pray. And he will no longer be in charge after that, because I believe the feelings against these preachers that didn't warn and didn't prepare them will be strong. So anyway, I just ask you to consider it. These are the wedding parables basically are Matthew 22, Matthew 25, and Luke 12, verse 35 to 44 is the key parts of it. And if we are ready, the point partly is the news story says who, what, where, when, why, and how. Well, we've talked about the why and the how, by God's grace. Why is that God's side is losing, and he wants a queen like in chess. In the chess game, the queen is the most valuable player on the board, can go any amount of moves for any direction, and God's side is losing. But when he anoints his side with power in Revelation 11 verse 3, he says in verse 1, rise, measure the temple. Well, that's the church, okay? And them that worship therein, that's believers. And he says, I will give power to my two witnesses, which is the Old and New Testament, lived in our lives. Okay, if we, like Elijah or John the Baptist, who was a later Elijah, and in our time Elijah's going to come again, I think we can be Elijahs. I believe that the wedding parables suggest that there are going to be 144,000 Elijahs, okay? Because in Revelation 14:4, there are 144,000 people who are virgins, and the only verse that explains that is the wise virgins that get into the wedding. I believe there will be 144,000 who are anointed with power from God. Okay, to do maybe like Philip, who was taken over to Ethiopian eunuch, saw him. I don't know how exactly, but I believe that the words of Christ to prophesy again include an understanding of the times, and when we see it coming, we should be warning and telling others about it, and then they may look to us as leaders. Okay, I think so. When we understand how and what is coming, it's something to be desired, that people will want an understanding. Right now, we're like the Laodicean church, rich and greased with goods, have need of nothing, and but God is going to take this all away. When the Laodicean church ended an earthquake, some people they got it. Material things are nothing. Really, it's God, and the earthquake will send a message: fear God, give glory to Him. The time of His judgment has come. Okay, that's the first angel's message in Revelation 14, verses 6 and 7. And we can do that if we understand more fully how these parables fit together and their timing. Timing is important because it says in Psalm 90, verse 12, teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Wisdom is needed to announce a time of judgment. Both times of judgment and weddings both have announcements that give date and time. And to think that we have to be ready all the time just doesn't fit. When you realize that Luke's wedding parable has triple Passover imagery for Passover as a time of judgment. That was what it was in Egypt, and that's what it was for the apostles. Christ approached his time of judgment and asked them to pray with him. Could you not watch 1 hour? Be awake. Okay. Well, that's the appropriate time. We can't be awake every night, but we can be once a year, if we understand that and watch and pray with him. He said, even 1 hour. He said, couldn't you watch 1 hour? That's in Matthew 26, verse 38 to 41. Well, I found out how we can stay awake. I usually fall asleep praying, but if you will read the closing chapters of Christ's life and pray between chapters, you can do that. You can see what he bore for us, and we can be ready. And so I'm seeing that that's how we do it. So the who is us, what is the wedding, the where is in the covenant that we make, when is Passover time, and I'll cover more about that in the second half of this. We're going to have a break in a couple minutes, but there's a special provision for Passover that I need to explain to you. Where, when, why? Because God loves us and He needs us. There's a saying, God has no hands but my hands, no feet but my feet. We have to live for Him. He's done it. It's in the Bible, and now it's can we incorporate that into our lives? And He will, at the end, have a group of people that He can point to that say they did it. Okay. And the point is that most people think that Christ had some special power that we can't have. He was perfect. He did all those things, but we can't. Well, God's going to has saved the best for last, and He's going to have a group of people who can live His law. There's nobody sticking a gun to your head to say you've got to murder that person, you've got to commit adultery, you got to lie. God's going to have a group of people who will obey His words. They will have no guile in their mouth. They will love their fellow man, and they will exhibit it. And so I just ask you to consider how. And I have a book. If you go to Health, Happiness, and Destiny, that's the title of this book. Health, Happiness, Destiny, no and, healthhappinessdestiny.com. Click on the book and DVD tab, and you'll also get a DVD which has more about this, because you can't possibly remember it all. There's a forgetting curve, and we forget 50% in the first 8 hours, and by the end of the week we've forgotten 50% of what's left. So get a book, read it, and you'll be blessed, and I will mail both a DVD and a book to you for $10 plus a little postage. And it's cheaper, it's half the price is on Amazon. You pay $10 for the DVD and $10 for the book. So stay after the break, and we'll continue more. Thank you very much, or in the next video.